Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. We're going to get started. I know that there's still people coming in. However, I want to give you as much time as possible. We're going to be talking about doing a lot of tree work. It's the journey with Microsoft on AppDynamics adoption and how they use it. So thank you very much, Spencer. We'll have a Q&A at the end.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you. So today we're going to talk about what I like to call digital lumberjacking, or give you some principles on how do you chip away at complex technology and culture change. Been working on those problems specifically at Citrix before here, and now Microsoft. So have to bring my axe with me, or people might think I'm a hipster, right? So going in and driving change, chipping away at problems, it's kind of hard. People don't always like to listen. So I think it's important that you actually bring your data axe with you so that eventually they take you seriously, not like a hipster, and you're able to actually accomplish things, build rapport and respect. So I'm going to tell you a little about myself. These are my two kids, Matthew and Carter, 6 and 18. Love spending time with them. I work really, really hard so I can spend time with them. Probably work harder than I should and miss time with them, but part of what drives me to drive culture change is so that I can get more time with them, right? So it's really important to work through your problems, face them head on, and then go focus on family, rest up, or whatever your interests are, and come back. So a little bit of my background and history so you understand where I come from and what I've done in the past. Thought when I was going to college I wanted to be a photojournalist, but decided after visiting a few colleges there wasn't a whole lot of money in it, and from talking to people who are in the industry, they said you really can't report 100% of the truth. There's a lot of yellow journalism in the news. So I decided to go into communications because I wanted to teach companies and people how to communicate better. So I went to the University of Memphis and became a communications major. After about a year, I'm like, crap, here's another thing. What kind of job am I going to find where somebody's going to hire me with no experience to come in and help them fix their communication problems? At the same time, I decided I needed to make a little extra money, so I went to the job board and at the college, and up in the top right-hand corner was a little postcard that said $9.25 an hour, apply now. So I went and applied, interviewed, and it wound up being fixing laptops for IBM. So I had a co-op student job there, got my hands on some micro hardware, trying to figure out how to take out 100 screws out of some of the laptops, put them all back together. Very interesting. But while I was there, I realized there were some serious problems in how their shipping and QA process worked. Customers weren't really satisfied. So I sat down and lobbied for some time on the side to sit down and build a process. So I built out a QA process and full ISO process with zero knowledge. Ended up running their shipping and QA department. After that, I left and went to a company called White Technology, where I got a lot of experience in looking at small and medium business around the Memphis, Tennessee area. I remember my first really hard experience was troubleshooting a token ring network, and I learned really quickly the smallest network is a T terminator and a T and two terminators on the end, and that's how you know at least your server's working. I remember beating my head against the wall till like 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out without knowing anything. After that, I left and went to be a director at a company called Message Factors, and I reported directly to the CEO and helped him with technology across his 5 different companies, ran the data processing department and all the technology stack. And what was interesting is I learned a lot about how culture worked, what happened, how you applied technology to different problems, and how you could give feedback to customers. A lot of our customers were very, very big accounts like Procter & Gamble and different people trying to figure out how do they look at customer data and figure out what do they need to do to drive change in their business. So I got a lot of exposure to the types of things you would do around customer sentiments and looking at it, which little did I know would help me in my career later on down the road. I left there and went to FedEx and decided I wanted to understand enterprise IT and how it really worked from the ground up. I went into their NOC and got a little bored because I was working the second shift and started automating a bunch of manual stuff. Everyone was just kind of sitting around just pushing the buttons constantly. And I was like, why are you doing this? Let's write some scripts. So it was kind of my first interaction into kind of what DevOps is today, trying to automate and just get things out of the way, get human error out of the way, and really start focusing on core problems and not just doing the same thing over and over. Worked my way up, taught myself HPUX, Solaris, AIX, loved Unix and Linux, helped bring Red Hat into FedEx. Before I left there, designing high availability clusters and really troubleshooting complex problems throughout the organization. Left there, decided I wanted to try something different, so I moved across the country and started working for Citrix. I didn't really know what they were doing out in California, but I really loved the West Coast, so I thought I'd give it a try. Got in there, it was in the go-to side of the Citrix properties. Fixed a lot of their back-end commerce systems, then moved in to run GoToMeeting.com, webinar and training. And there's where I really started learning a lot about, wow, this place is really, really broken. How do we actually optimize for the best customer experience? How do we actually get people to believe that developers and other people in the business actually care, that they actually want to help and actually get to know things? The main thing is you just have to keep trying. So I mean, I learned a ton, and we'll talk some more about that throughout this presentation. Eventually, I came here and spoke at AppSphere a couple years ago. And I've been working with AppDynamics for quite a while, part of how I learned how to solve problems at Citrix and really get deep and leverage AppDynamics as a communication mechanism. So now I'm at Microsoft and running some SRE teams around the Dynamics 365 properties. A lot of CRM competition with Salesforce, and it's a very complex platform. It's more of a platform than a SaaS service because customers can actually inject their own customizations into it. So massive scale and a lot of challenging problems. And it's a little more interesting than my job at Citrix because at Citrix it was lean. I didn't have a whole lot of teams. At Microsoft, there's a lot of resources there that you can leverage if you can just get people to work together. So we'll talk about that as we go through. So as we kind of head down the journey, picture my son and I hiking. Something else I also love to do is get out and hike and be in nature and try to de-stress and decompress. We'll talk about some of the similarities between Java and .NET. A lot of the lessons I've learned, successes I've had, and you'll walk away with some tools on how to solve problems and how to actually get people aligned so that you can make change in your organization. How you can actually become what I like to call a digital lumberjack. So there's 4 principles I'll talk about today. The first one is dive in now. Do it now. Like seriously. I guarantee nothing you're going to do is like the guy trying to climb the tree and cut it down. I know I wouldn't do that. I'd be scared crapless. All right, the next one is drive, do it yourself. And that's not just like do everything yourself, but get your hands on the keyboard, get in front of it. Don't be afraid to do it. Like literally get in and drive and then teach others, right? Dig or excavate. So digging in to find root cause problems, being persistent about when to do it, walking away, coming back, but continuing to look and dig through. And the last one is disrupt. It's so critical that you change the status quo. I mean, in the main stage presentation yesterday, if anything, you heard about disruption and actually how fast the world's moving and technology's changing and how you have to constantly look at what you're doing and how you're doing it, look at data, and really pulling the business in, and that's really, really important. So dive in now. So this is me. My wife will kill me for playing that. She doesn't know I have it. My son sent it to me. He took this a few years ago in California. We were trying to just have some fun. Decided to take a boogie board on a slip and slide because the thing they gave us wasn't there. But a little humility. I mean, so it's important. The reason I put this in here is to remind myself to talk to you guys about humility. It's important to be real, be human, not be afraid to be embarrassed. Everyone's human. Just remember that. It doesn't matter what level of the organization they're in. They're all human. Get to know them. Expose yourself. All right? Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can, Arthur Ashe. So I picked this quote out because it really speaks to me quite a bit. It's like a research paper. Getting started on it is really, really hard, but once you start, getting through isn't really that tough. And I find that in everything I kick off in an organization I'm in. There's something I'll talk about later about the 4D sessions or a daily data deep dive that I kicked off with my teams. It's really starting to drive some massive cultural change inside my division. And it's just important to not wait for the right time or not necessarily wait for your knowledge to be there, but to schedule something, put it on the calendar, and just get it going. You can iterate on it. You can get feedback. You can pull others in with you. But someone's got to actually lead it and get started with it. So, I mean, if you can take anything away from this entire presentation, it's that. So just dive in, right? We'll summarize this a little bit. Don't wait for air support. You can do this from grassroots. You can do it from the middle. The air support is great. But it doesn't matter. The leader should really set the vision. Everyone else should drive the outcomes. So drive. So this particular picture puts a lot of emotion into me. I've been on both sides of this fence. I always feel more like I'm on the right side than the left. Because as a digital lumberjack or a culture changer, it's kind of hard. It's a little bit awkward. And people don't like you shining light or data on their problems, right? I like to be careful not to be the guy kicking somebody off the edge. I'll bring data to the table. I like to say, one of my mantras lately has been, kill them with kindness, beat them with data. But not to embarrass them or not to even make them feel like they're inadequate, but to get them to turn around, leverage the data and work with others. I'll invest as much as I have or can give, and more than I'll actually even take time away from my family, which I don't like to do, but I'm really just too bought into what I'm doing, and I'm really passionate about it. Some of the things that will happen, and one of the ways that I feel like this a lot of time is sabotage. You will see as you're becoming a digital lumberjack and you're moving through trying to change culture and technology problems, you will find people actually trying to sabotage you. I have an example right now that I'm dealing with to where I have an entire team that's been doing some amazing thing. One of my teams has been taking all the different third-party tool sets we have, and they've been building them up, operationalizing them, fixing them, and we've taken them from other teams that had them, and no one was using them. And then we have sessions to where we're teaching people how to use them constantly and improving them, working our backlog down. But some of the teams that should be using the tools aren't, and now they're asking questions about what is your team doing. But every other team that's been engaged is giving great feedback. So it's interesting how the sabotage can come in. Just remember to not give up and keep working through it. So I didn't realize this until I actually got to Microsoft. I actually am a change agent. I'm also actually a disruptor, and each one of you here can be too. So these are 5 principles I gave away at AppSphere 2 years ago on the main stage. Passion, partnerships, positivity, persistence, and patience. I have a guy that when I was at Citrix that was in our NOC, I pulled out. He was there for a year. He had worked another year and a half before that, Occam Networks and customer support. So he knew the customer side. He didn't have a lot of experience. But these are some principles I gave him and to work through, and we talked about them from a thought leadership perspective, like how do you apply change? How can you, with not a lot of experience, apply yourself to drive change in this organization? And it's really all about taking the passion that you have. If you get frustrated by a problem or you're really excited about something, instead of bitching about it, go do something about it, right? Dive in, drive, go do something about it. Partnerships, building those relationships with the people that actually care to change things. So not worrying about the guy that's going to kick you off the side of the cliff, but find the people that are going to lend out a hand and pull you back in. Positivity, always keeping positive. When you're negative, it brings everybody down. Being persistent, waiting for the right time, bringing your ideas out of your idea vault when the time's right, whether there's a really big outage, a problem, or you just meet the right person. Constantly evangelizing communication through your partnerships and being persistent, super, super important. And the last one is patient. And that's a lot of waiting for the right time, but not giving up. You apply those, I guarantee you'll be successful. Action changes things. It goes into what we talked about a little while ago. Jump in, drive. I find a lot of times people are waiting. I've got a guy right now that we hired in, and he had found some data through some tools and digging through logs. And he's like, I see all these problems. I see this really big problem. I want somebody to do something about it. So he filed a ticket to my monitoring team. I'm like, why did you send to those guys? They'll help you. He's like, I don't know, somebody should do something about it. I'm like, why don't you do something about it? No one told me to. I need air support. No, you don't. How about this? I'm an executive here. Please do it. Really? Yes. So it's like back and forth, but no action, right? So it really is as simple as taking the data and go try to take action on it. Hopefully that guy will learn and start taking action. His career will skyrocket. If not, he won't be part of the change that we have. So becoming a change agent, take your data axe. You're definitely in control. You have to pick up your tools. They may not work. You may not understand how to use them, but I do find in the middle of critical situations or outages is the best time to go look. If you're somewhat exposed to them, we'll talk a little bit more about how to be constantly exposed to them. You'll have some sort of mental baseline of what's going on, similar to the baseline AppD. I mean, you can use that to kind of give you reference to what things were doing before, but you have to build your own mental baseline of what your environment looks like, how to use it, what's going on, what's normal, what's not. So it's important to be engaged, use your data axe, and kind of dig into things to become a change agent. Really chopping down the tree silos, really hard, but it can be done. So this reminds me of some things I really like to do when I remember to do them. Getting out with my team. I'm going to encourage each of you to get out of your office, get with your team, go out and walk. Walking, I'm pacing some here as much as I feel like I can. But when you move and walk, your brain actually thinks a little differently. And getting out of the office, getting fresh air if you can, makes a big difference. It gets you out of that normal stuffy environment. It brings down barriers. Negotiation 101, it takes everyone out of that. It puts everybody in a neutral zone, basically. No one has the up on anyone else. So everyone feels like they can be more transparent. So this is a Venn diagram of some things that I learned fairly recently from watching behaviors, and that's part of what my job has become a lot, is behavioral analysis and then applying effective change to that. So I talked about earlier how I wanted to be a communication expert inside companies to help them, and what's happened in my career over time is I've become a technology communication expert. It's really cool how that happened. I don't know how it happened, but I guess it's what I'm actually passionate about doing. So out of these three things, you can dig in, you can be present, you can be engaged. What I see out of teams or people that aren't successful, they just choose one of these. I found the ones that choose two are actually fairly successful. If you actually choose three, like if you be present, be engaged, and digging in all at the same time and constantly, as a digital lumberjack, you will drive change. There's no doubt. And if you watch for the behaviors in other people, the ones that are doing those are your correct ones to partner with. All right, so these are some of the things I didn't really understand how to explain to people last time I talked about how to find the right partners. And this is what occurred to me, so I wanted to share that with you guys. So we talked a little about driving in now, driving, and now we're going to talk about digging. So you can go around and chop down the tree silos, but unfortunately, chopping down a tree doesn't really get rid of the roots. It doesn't fix your problems. It doesn't really fix any, it doesn't find the root. It just kind of does surfaces. So you really have to figure out, where the problems lie. And that requires taking tools, digging in. One of the most recent problems that I worked on, this is a lot of different application groups talking into a centralized service. And I was in the middle of a really important meeting. I stepped out because I saw this in AppD when I got an executive page, and I was like, this does not look good. So we started digging in. And when we found the data, people didn't believe us what was going on. And the conference bridge lasted a couple hours longer than it probably should. But after the problem was over, and we looked at the data and we sat down with everybody again and taught them, like, guys, this is why this is important. This is why it's important to look at things different. We're moving very rapidly from a ticket-based culture and from being operators to being operations engineers and learning how to react on things before our customers file a ticket or somebody else or even an alarm system goes off, right? It's important to look at your dashboard to understand what's going on, but really learn your environment incrementally. So we'll move from dig on to disrupt. So like I said a little while ago, I am a disruptor. And I didn't really realize that again until literally my boss that I have right now told me, he's like, Spencer, do you realize you're a disruptor? And I'm like, no. I just want to solve things that help the customers have a better experience. But that's not always everyone's focus. People are motivated by money, bonuses, whatever their leader tells them to do. So in order to be a really true disruptor, you have to get the data together, get people to understand it, and get their compass set on the customer. A lot of what's being talked about in the keynotes. So this is a picture of something that's been disruptive in the logging industry, or taking away from some of the lumberjacks' friends. But every one of you has probably seen this in your environments where technology is being put together and changing the way we all work, making things more efficient, taking away the mistakes, taking away the gut decisions. I mean, you could look at this log and kind of draw it out and think, yeah, I think I kind of know how this works, but I guarantee you the computer's going to do it better almost every time. And it's all using data to do that. So this brings up something that I was challenged to do back last winter, and I kicked it off. It took me a little while to decide I needed to dive in and how to get done, which is why I thought that was important to bring up. And this was the 4D session I'm talking about, or the daily data deep dive. And it started with me driving a computer, inviting my team and a bunch of other teams, development. And we sat down and we just started looking through our tools and looking at data because things were really, really broken, and no one really knew a lot about the system from end to end. So we started digging through. I didn't know the systems. I haven't worked in .NET in 8 years until I got to this job. Been doing a lot of Java. We'll talk about some of the similarities I found out. But really, you just look at the tools you have or put new ones in. Look at the data. Some of the things we've done here is identify something we'll talk about in a few minutes called a noisy neighbor. To where one user, when something's not architected correctly, can cause other people problems. We take notes from these types of sessions every day. We give those out, but then we document, and we immediately file backlog items into the proper team and then follow up on to make sure they get solved. The other thing that's really been cool about this session is I don't get to attend it much anymore because I'm being pulled up into a lot of other things. And my team has taken it, and they've been able to drive it. And if you can take something and get another person or more people to drive it, you know it's successful. You still need to follow it, make sure it's working. But that's how you know you're on the right track. The other thing we've been doing with this, and the other important thing, the drive is so important, is to get people hands-on. So we ask for volunteers constantly to put their hands on the keyboard, with or without knowledge of every tool that we have or the systems that we have. And my team, it's mandatory for them to be there unless they have a really, really good excuse. It's not a meeting, it's a working session. We actually have a no meeting Wednesday, and it's the only thing on the calendar they're required to go to. And it's to support everyone else that's there. So anyone can come put their hands on the keyboard and drive the session over the screen, over the conference call, and look at data. And what that does is reinforcing. It actually got some really good feedback from my NOC manager, who was very resistant at putting everybody in there, anybody in the sessions, because they were really busy fighting the tickets that were coming in. And so after a lot of convincing, it probably took about 6 months, he finally sent his guys. And I was standing outside, getting ready to go home, and he came up to me, he's like, Spencer, he's like, I don't know why I didn't listen before. He's like, I really appreciate you doing that. Those sessions is like, I'm watching the two people that I've been sending solve problems faster and looking at data. They're no longer looking at their gut. And the gut is helpful to kind of tell you there's something going on, to sense it, like your spidey sense. But it's not going to tell you what's going on or where. And so doing this session every single workday is building that experience or that baseline of what's going on. So it's one of the ways to force yourself. Otherwise, you get busy with the noise of doing other things. So it's really forceful looking. I had a leader when I was at Citrix that continued to say, look at the red A's, look at the red A's. And it's really easy when you're at the top looking down, you look at a dashboard and things look bad, to say, go fix all these problems. But if you just look at the red A's or the alerts to fix the problems, you're not looking down at those root causes. So it's really important to keep analyzing, look at the deep root problems and then snuff those out. That will actually free you up time to go automate, build solutions, build partnerships into other parts of the organization, and then things actually change. This was the first example that I've had of where this type of session has been done, and it's really been driving a lot of cultural change. So one of the things that's important to know as you're looking through that data is how to solve problems. So it's like I said, looking for the root causes, focusing on the systematic issues, finding those patterns. So pattern matching is really key. And sitting down with my 6-year-old Carter the other day and playing memory, a little game where you flip things over. And you really, by luck, if you get a match right off the bat, but if you remember the patterns of where stuff is, you can actually find things and win. And it's similar with data, looking at the data, looking for the patterns of what's going on, looking at your baselines, looking at problems. You can actually dig down, draw conclusions, hypothesize the problem, go drive a fix, and then measure afterwards. And that's actually an important thing to mention. Measuring before and measuring before a change. If your teams aren't doing it, be the change agent that gets in front of them, encourage them to use whatever tools you have to look before and after, and they'll start realizing what's going on, and you'll reduce your downtime. Some of the similarities between Java and .NET. Let's talk about what I've noticed. Like I said, I hadn't touched .NET in a really long time, and I was super concerned coming to a company like Microsoft who writes .NET. What am I going to do? I don't really know this. But I knew AppD was there, and I knew AppD pretty well. Works a little differently in .NET, but it still works similarly too. So some of the things that I noticed, I mean, the basics of throughput, errors, latency, you can look at that most of the time and see what's going on. Sometimes errors, you might actually have to look at exceptions. So errors are pretty good in Java. In .NET, so far what I've seen is exceptions, which are down in your error tab in AppD, are actually more important to look at. Your spike and exceptions will actually show you what's going on and when you have a problem. Blocking and database contention on your back end. There really isn't a whole lot of difference between SQL, Oracle, on those things. It's all in how you look at the data, what you do with it, how you react to it. But those are some of the key problems that happen. They can be caused by application design, or they can just be caused by query design or lots of other things, but they're very, very similar problems. Synchronous and asynchronous transactions. One of the things I've noticed about .NET is it's so easy to use asynchronous transactions that in Java it doesn't necessarily work quite as well, that they're implemented. But tracing those back can be very difficult in either environment and understanding what's going on. But they're very, very similar. So I mean, it's important to understand that you don't have to necessarily know the technology. You can learn, iterate over time, and you can use tools to figure it out. The other place I've learned that in my career is the difference at the OS level between Unix, Linux, and Windows. Very similar things. There's a command line on both, commands that do similar stuff. Ultimately, there's a kernel that can be tuned to do everything else. It's just another piece of technology. It's no different than the old school. I don't know if anybody remembers the old VCRs where you had to like actually push the buttons to do a program in a certain order up on the top, just to make sure your tape went off, and if you didn't do it right, you didn't know and you missed your show. It's really learning. So let's talk about some of the things that I've learned over time that go along with these principles and can help. So communicate in real time. I can't stress this enough. If someone sends me an email, I likely won't read it. I'll try my best. I get way too many. It's like I tell you, if you really need something, pick up the phone, send me a text, send me a chat, something in real time. I've had a few people on my team say, I sent them an email like a week ago. I'm like, have you followed up? No. We'll follow up. As soon as they do, they reach out, they get a response. So I mean, we're all busy. The culture, the reality of technology and the way business is having to move really fast is we're going to become more and more disconnected from old ways of communicating. I remember when I was a director, the way we communicated before I installed the Exchange server and lit it up, which revolutionized the way that company worked at the time. It was the old school paper memos, and you put them in your outbox on your desk, and there was a guy that would come and pick them up and sort them and then go redeliver them to people. Even if you're in the same office of maybe 30 people. It was ridiculous. I chose not to use that most of the time unless I had to document something, and I would just get on my feet, which I think is the best way, if you can, is get in person, go find somebody. That way you actually have a full communication loop. You have understanding. That was probably the biggest thing I walked away with from in college when I was doing the communication majors, was understanding that communication is not just throwing something at somebody, but actually making sure they understand it and have the context that's needed. So building a teams sets of diverse skills. So it's important that teamwork is so important. You can do things individually as a digital lumberjack, but it's going to take you a long damn time to chop down the forest. If you just have an axe and not somebody knows how to use a saw or somebody knows how to use other tools, you're going to be pretty tired. It's going to be hard. So it's really important to find and align with people that have different skill sets. If you're building a team that you're trying to change culture with, pull them in. Understand technical things can be taught. Understand what are their soft skills? How do they work with people? Can they recall events so they can actually talk to you or anyone else about what happened so they can continue that communication loop? If they can't remember something or tell you a war story about something, probably not the right person to be on the team. So teamwork, we kind of talked about that too. Tight integration, making sure you're working together. It'd be really hard if the person, you can't see them sawing down this tree, wasn't really working hard with the other. If they're both pulling at the same time, it doesn't work out too well. And part of that requires, from a leadership perspective, actually being engaged, or even as a peer. You don't have to be a leader to be engaged and like to drive teamwork. If you see two people pulling at both sides of the saw, stop them, ask them what's going on, get in the middle of it, dive in. Alignment. So over on the left side, there's a truck getting loaded up. If it's not loaded up correctly and everything's not aligned, you wind up with what's on the right. You wind up with a big wreck. Things are unbalanced. Things don't work out too well. And having alignment is hard. Especially, I'm used to doing things from a grassroots, from a middle tier up, not from always the top down. And I find that actually works better because it's not forced, it's unnatural, which means whatever is usually applied, if it's successful, really works. So as we summarize this, I want to encourage you to definitely dive in now. Don't wait. Be in the driver's seat and encourage others to drive too. Dig, dig, dig. Don't ever give up on finding the root causes, and really try to filter out the noise and try to focus on one or two things that you find really passionate or they're frustrating you, that you want to dig in and find and keep pushing. Look at the data. Work with your teams that own tools or your vendors that build them. Help them understand your problems so they can actually build them to help you find them. Ultimately, it will free up more and more of your time to be more successful and to work on things as you continue to learn. Because everyone in this world will have to continue to learn. And finally, disrupt with data. There's no, like I said, kill them with kindness, beat them with data. There's no other way to really win this battle without data. When I came to Microsoft, I thought I was going to just be a technical person going and figuring things out. And just like most of the rest of my career, I quickly became a leader. And I realized that we had to do a lot of culture change, a lot of what I had done at Citrix. One of the things I realized was the problems are very similar. And from talking to people in the industry, they're facing the exact same challenges. And it's the problems, like I'm talking some about technology, but the problems aren't technological usually. You can apply just about any technology to solve a problem, and there's lots of choices. The problems are a lot of times cultural. And one of the reasons I built a team around tools and built a practice around looking at data is because I learned at Citrix you really can't change things without data. And even when you have the right data, it may take you 2 to 3 years. There was one thing I talked about a couple of years ago, which was a problem in the GoToMeeting brokers, the main centralized core of the product that orchestrated everyone getting into session. And if you're a salesperson doing a call with a customer and you're trying to get in, or you're running a presentation, everything's on the line, and you can't actually get into your session to share with people. Not so good, but I found the line of code. It took me a couple of years to find it, and that was looking through logs, implementing AppD, looking through, finding it. I found it, and then I couldn't get people to do anything with it. Everyone was really working on features. So I had measurements of what it looked like before every time it occurred, and every single time it happened, I'd put it in the root cause analysis. I'd make sure it was there. I'd bubble it up. Eventually, I built an entire biz DevOps practice and started working with the team that controlled the P&L of the product and showing them the data. And still at first, they didn't even get it because I realized it was too technical. Until we broke it down and I started putting customer sentiments or quotes from customers about their specific problems and showing the data and convincing someone to fix it did the problem stop. The last major problem, unfortunately, got fixed as we were trying to decommission the system. We were trying to move to a new SOA platform, and I'm like, okay, here's the data I've been showing you guys for 3 years. Here's the problem. They couldn't get everybody migrated off. It kept timing out and having problems. And so I'm like, go fix this. So finally, one of the developers fixed it. And then they were able to seamlessly migrate off. It was the most stable platform that I've ever seen once that code was fixed, because we had already fixed the rest of it. But in order to really efficiently scale for our customers and to have the best availability, it was our best interest to get onto a new, more distributed, more modern platform. So you can disrupt with data, but you have to continue to drive, you have to continue to dig, and you have to dive in. And now questions.
Yeah, you talked about the daily deep dive. Is that actually daily, weekly? And how do you keep the momentum going forward with that meeting?
It's 5 days a week. So Monday through Friday, unless there's some sort of executive briefing going on. 10:30 every day. It's on the calendar. If it's just my team, one of my teams that shows up, that's all that's there. But we don't stop, right? It's being very, very determined. And then it's going around evangelizing. Like I said, we take notes. They're emailed out. They're on a OneNote. You can go through and look at the history of every single day we've done it and what we've defined. There's screenshots of the picture. So you can actually use it as a training. There's videos and screenshots of it. So if you had a new person onboarding, you could sit them down with a few of those presentations, and they could learn a lot about your environment really quickly. So it's an iterative process. I mean, learning is so iterative. And so that's why it was so important to do it every single day. Does that help? Yeah. It's hard. It's 5 hours of time out of a 40-hour work week. But it's that critical, that important to understand what's going on. Otherwise, I know how to use AppD really well and other tool sets, but it doesn't do me any good if everyone else doesn't too. I mean, that's something I talk about also, is like really giving away all of your knowledge so you can go learn something else. It's so important to do. So it's on a daily basis, the best way. There's no excuses.
You talked at the end there about getting closer to the business and using sentiment to express the point you were trying to make. Yeah. How have you found, and how have you worked more closely with the business as you've tried to drive this change, and how have you communicated more effectively with the business?
So it's listening to customer sentiments, and then understanding what are the business problems. What is the business trying to do? So the business usually has goals it has to meet for one reason or another. So it's getting the data of what are the financial reports. If it's an online service, looking at your CAC ratio, your customer acquisition costs, looking at your retention rates, what's going on the back door, and then leveraging those data points that, say, a finance person or someone else might understand, to find data to come up and support it and say, hey, I think I know why this is going on, and then do experimental change using like lean startup methodology to go fix things, look at the data, talk to them about it, and see how the change is working. So it's an iterative process. But you actually have to get out of your desk and go find out who those people are and work with them. A lot of what was in the main stage presentation yesterday was exactly that, like building things. That's one of the reasons the analytics platform is coming in here, to help build that knowledge, expose the data, give it away. Traditionally, I've seen technology teams kind of keep it, not necessarily on purpose, but they just kind of keep it in-house themselves to run their systems. But especially as the world becomes more and more online, or SaaSified, or whatever you want to call it, the data is all in the interactions inside the system. So you just have to expose it and help them understand what's going on. Sometimes it might be building a dashboard for them. It just depends. One of the things I started building before I left Citrix was something called the Data Compass, which was literally identifying, here's the leadership's true north goals, and then here's the data points out of the system on a dashboard of what's happening. And they could click down and drill down from a CEO level all the way down into the other pieces, all the way down to the technologists at the bottom end, even administrating hardware to get to the answers. So you can look top down or bottom up.
You mentioned the concept of a noisy neighbor, so somebody that it doesn't quite work for and then raises a lot of problems for everybody else. What are your tips for dealing with someone like that to get them on board?
That one's hard. You have to have a lot of data because people don't want to believe that that's actually there. The way I actually drove that change was literally at a 4th of July event, happened to talk to one of our architects and evangelizing that we had found the problem because I couldn't get the development team at the time to listen to me. And so he promised me he would look into it. 2 months later, we had a conversation where he's like, I've looked at the data and I don't think it's a problem. And I'm like, no, it's a problem. I sat him down with my team. We showed him all the stuff from our 4D notes, which was really important because then we had documented history of all the different times that we saw that data. And then we took it and he went back and looked at data again and he realized, crap, this really is a problem, right? So we started seeing contention when certain load would come in a specific way, it would cause certain problems. And it was not just in one place in the stack, it was at every single layer of our stack. There was either blocking being caused somewhere on the database layer or it was running out a thread contention or a connection contention, issues up in our top layer and our middle tier layer. And what he did was he continued to find data himself. So we empowered him with the use case and some data to support it. And he was able to dive into more data and provide a presentation to take to the C-level. And from there, he outlined each different team's backlog items of what they needed to do. And the C-level's like, do it now. And so that actually provided air support. More about the noisy neighbor. I mean, it's hard to detect. Right? You have to look at the data constantly. If you can break down your data by customer or by user, it gets a little easier to do. You kind of have to look for, when you have a specific problem or you have an anomaly, it's digging in and trying to figure out where it's at, right? So it's one of the ways we did that at first. The first time we discovered it was leveraging the analytics platform and just breaking it up pretty quickly.
Any other questions? Cool. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.